We invite you to stand for the prayer, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. Our Father, who art in heaven, as a body we congregate in this council chambers for the betterment of our fellow citizens, lead us that we may do all things well. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Morton?
Present.
Mr. Stuchel?
Present.
Mr. Edwards?
Present.
Ms. Hausfeld?
Here.
Mr. Schildmeyer?
Present.
Mr. Culbertson?
Present.
And Mr. Estep.
Present.
Let the record show that all 7 members are present. Members of council, what is your pleasure on the reading of the minutes of the last meeting?
Mr. President,
Mr. Schultmeyer.
I make a motion that we dispense with the reading and accept minutes as written.
Seconded.
Motion by Mr. Schultmeyer, second by Mr. Morton to suspend with the reading or dispense with the reading of the last minutes. Are there any remarks? Not all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So ordered. Members of council, are there any errors or corrections to the minutes as submitted? Not, the minutes will stand as submitted. We'll move to reports of city officials. Mayor Stuchel.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are actively gearing up for the biggest event of the year in St. Bernard. On Friday, August 2nd and Saturday, August 3rd is the St. Bernard German Luau. They'll be held right outside here in the heart of the village. The German Luau entertainment lineup on Friday, August 2nd, the festival kicks off with the keg tapping at 5:30 on center stage right here on Washington Avenue. Also, the main line event will be the Naked Karate Girls. They'll be playing from 7 to 11 on center stage. On Saturday, August 3rd, we have the Fresh Market vendors from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Washington Avenue at the school board lot. Also, we have the German Luau Parade at 12:30. The route is available. That will be in the newsletter tomorrow. Also, it is on the Facebook page for the Luau. We also have on Saturday, the dog costume contest at 1:30 center stage. And then we have the Aquila Island Dancing Group from 2 to 2:45. And then again on Saturday, we have Route 61 Happy Wanderers from 3 to 6 center stage. And then we will be having on Saturday from 6 to 6:15, the Bill Helton Proclamation declaring Saturday the 3rd Bill Helton Day in the village. And we will then have Velvet Crush from 7 to 11. There'll be kids games Friday from 5 to 10 and Saturday 2 to 10. And we will also be having the St. Bernard Celebrity Dunk Booth on Friday from 6 to 9 and Saturday from 5 to 9. Yours truly will be there Friday from 8 to 8:30, so bring your money, and also Saturday from 5 to 5:30. Also, a couple other key points. Of course, right now, currently, the German Luau merchandise is available for pre-order. The deadline for the items, personalized items, is midnight, July 30th. Non-personalized items will be available for purchase at the event. And the link is available on the Luau Facebook page and will be available in the special edition newsletter that's going to be going out tomorrow. Also, volunteers for the German Luau are greatly needed. Again, the St. Bernard German Luau is a large effort, and we do need any help that we can get. If you're willing to help us out, please look for opportunities. On Thursday, August 1st at 7 p.m., we'll be moving and setting up tables and chairs in the tent. On Friday, starting at 1 p.m., we'll be setting up booths and equipment. Friday from 5 p.m. to midnight, we will be needing individuals that are willing to assist with trash and ice. On Saturday, again, from 2 p.m. to midnight, trash and ice. And then on Sunday, at 10 a.m., we'll be tearing down tables, chairs, and booths. If you are interested, you simply can show up or check the recreation booth where the beer tickets are being sold. Or if you have any questions, you can call or text Chris Sauer at 513-235-8104. I personally want to thank everyone who's been working diligently on this event, and I'd like to thank the community and our attendees and volunteers in advance for supporting what is the beginning of the Oktoberfest season, which starts right here in St. Bernard. Lastly, the Village of St. Bernard will be entering into an agreement between the Board of County Commissioners, Hamilton County, Ohio, the Village of St. Bernard, to administer a community grant revitalization award for property development. The Village of St. Bernard was awarded a $200,000 grant, and this project is a continuation of the redevelopment of the former St. Bernard Shopping Center on Vine Street in the heart of the business district. The funding helps cover the cost of property acquisition to allow for free and clear ownership of 4901 Vine Street. The acquisition will ensure the progression and completion of the critical community development. This project will add density and encourage economic growth and be a catalyst for future development. I'd like to ask to be put on the agenda for the committee of the whole so that an ordinance accepting the terms of the agreement and the appropriation of funds is put on the table. Again, this is a reimbursement grant, and the funds can only be for the defined use in the payoff of this particular parcel. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Auditor, Ms. Brickway.
Thank you, Mr. President. For tonight's meeting is ordinance 24, 2024, which we discussed at the committee of the whole. It moves $550,000 out of the general fund transfer out into the capital improvement cash account. And then it includes the additional appropriations of the $550,000 capital improvements. This is 1/3 of the payment for the new fire truck. It also includes $10,125.83 into 7A13. This is a grant that the fire department received, and they're going to buy an, I guess it would call equipment, dryer. It's to wash all their turnout gear. And then 0166 unemployment, 20,000. We usually don't get unemployment claims, but we have received a few, which I have appealed, but we lost the appeal. So I've spent most of the money in that line item, and I'm just putting 20,000 in it for now. We'll have to see how it continues to play out. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Director of Law, Ms. Van Valkenburg.
Thank you. You have before you ordinances number 19, 20, and 21, which I believe are due for their second reading tonight. You also have before you ordinance number 22, which I believe is due for its first reading. It's the one of correction of the triple negative. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Treasurer, Mr. Ungru.
Thank you, Mr. President. This evening I received the Star of Ohio statement. Our funds with the state at the end of June totaled $12,346,311. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Safety and Service Director, Mr. Wardman.
I briefly wanted to follow up on the discussion from the Committee of the Whole meeting regarding the rodent issue that was reported behind the Surefine property. I did want to report that the Hamilton County Health Department has done 2 inspections of the property, one on July 15th and one on July 22nd. They're continuing to monitor the situation and will be following up on some outstanding items that are still outstanding next week. Secondly, I wanted to take a moment to recognize Don Middleton in the Service Department. The reason I'm doing that is because I had a citizen personally come to my office earlier this week, which doesn't happen very often. Normally, if they're coming to the office, they're coming to complain, not to heap praise on people. But he was heaping praise on Don for acting quickly on a comment that he had made about smoothing the track down at Ross Park. In my short time here, I've seen Don's bias for action, and I can tell that he sets a very high standard for public service that we should all aspire to. Finally, we found out today that Moody's has reaffirmed the village's debt bond rating at A1. This is a solid investment grade bond rating, so that's good news from a financial standpoint for the village. That's the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Tax Administrator, Ms. Helms.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I have the June 2024 end of month receipts. Tax collection for June was $1,070,160. June of 2024 is up 73%, or about $450,602 from June of 2023. 2024 year-to-date collections are $6,193,976. We're up about 6.92% from mid-year of 2023. Refunds for June were $4,479. Delinquent tax collected with capital recovery was $923.49. Delinquent tax collected with the Ohio Attorney General's office was $11,059. Just on a professional note, I have been named the vice chair for the Southwest Tax Administrators Association and have recently presented at the 2024 Ohio Municipal League Tax Conference. I just want to say it was an honor to represent the city of St. Bernard. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. We'll move to reports of standing committees. Finance, Mr. Morton.
Thank you, Mr. President. All are encouraged and welcome to attend the August Community Connect on Thursday, August 1st from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. at Ross Park's Area Number 1 Pavilion, which is just past the parking lot in the old concession stand near the Ross Ave entrance. In the event of inclement weather, an alternative location will of course be announced and reflected on the calendar within the village website. If you would like to suggest the location of the next Community Connect, please feel free to reach out to me via email, call, or text, all of which can be, again, found on the village website. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Service, Mr. Stuchel.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Service Department would like to inform residents on updates to projects around the village. The larger section of the dog park at Ross Park has finally been reopened to the public. Please be aware of the new dog park rules that are posted on the fences surrounding the park. The old shuffleboard counters in Alpine Park are being removed due to them becoming more and more deteriorated over the years. Then lastly, the graffiti along Vine Street and the old Long John Silver's lot and on the telephone poles along Ross Avenue have all been removed. And that concludes the end of my report.
Thank you. Public improvements, Mr. Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. President. There was no need for a Public Improvement Committee meeting, but I would like to add West Banco to our agenda for our next Committee of the Whole meeting. As a customer of West Banco, I received a letter informing me that the St. Bernard branch will be closing in October. Now, this would be a great inconvenience to our residents. The next closest branch is in Montford Heights near the Sam's Club store on North Bend Road. This would also mean our St. Bernard would go from 3 banks to 1 bank in less than 1 year. Hopefully we can work together to keep our branch open. Thank you, Mr. President. This concludes my report.
Thank you. Safety, Ms. Housefeld.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight I have the St. Bernard Fire Department report for the month of June 2024. Fire incidents, structure fires were 3, other fires 4, vehicle fires 1, auto accidents 4, service calls 6, fire alarms 14, EMS assistance 12, total of 44. Mutual aid given, Elmwood Place 6, Norwood 2, Deer Park 1, Springfield Township 1, Forest Park 1, Coleraine Township 1. Mutual aid received does not have anything under there, but let's see. EMS incidents, transports 47, non-transports 55, for a total of 102. Elmwood Place contract incidents 4, mutual aid given, Norwood 1, Elmwood 1, Cincinnati 1, and mutual aid received 1. All units toward a new St. Bernard School campus and complete building construction and 360 scene size up training. CPR training provided to Emmanuel United Church. Hydrants are being painted ongoing throughout the village. I also have the police department report. The activity for the last month of June 2024, the police department had 754 calls for service, resulting in 662 contacts. There were an additional 511 other services, details that were not necessarily called in by the public. These calls for service included 62 total criminal offenses and resulted in 108 criminal arrests, including 4 OVIs. 59 traffic citations, including 10 for speed, as well as 90 traffic warnings, including 22 for speed. They responded to 13 accidents as well, 3 of which included injuries. News and notes, the training of Officer Savage is going well, and he has now switched to day shift, so you may be seeing him more frequently during the day now. The motorcycle has been out on patrol quite often. The department is excited to assist in ensuring that the luau is safe and fun for all. Please come out the 1st of August and enjoy this community event. That concludes both the fire and police department report, Mr. President.
Thank you. Laws, contracts, and claims, Mr. Schultmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Last night, we held, July 24th, we held the last session of laws, contracts, and claims meeting, in that we discussed the short and long-term rentals and briefly discuss the noise ordinance. We have elected to add some language about vacant properties within the village of St. Bernard. The next Laws, Contracts, and Claims meeting will be held on August 20th at 7 p.m. in council chambers. Both those things will be back on the agenda with the goal of completing the short and long-term rental language and bringing it before council shortly thereafter. That concludes my report, Mr. President.
Thank you. Marketing, Mr. Culbertson.
Thanks, Mr. President. Tomorrow night, Friday, July 26th, is Family Night at the Aquatic Center from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. On Tuesday, August 13th, there is a Garden Club meeting at 6 p.m. in the lower level of City Hall. On that same night, the next We Thrive meeting will take place at 7 p.m. in the main level of the municipal building. On Friday, August 16th, there will be a pavilion reunion and an adult night at the Aquatic Center from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. There will be a Texas Hold'em tournament starting at 6 p.m. and a concert from the Sunburners from 7 to 11 p.m. Bring your own beverage, and the village will handle the food. So whether you're a good former basketball player like Mr. Estep or a not-so-good basketball player like me and Rec Director Paul Schulmeyer, we would love for everybody to come down to that pavilion reunion. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Business and Industry, Mr. Estep.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. Culbertson. Thank you, Mr. Wordman, for your help in getting the emails straightened out. Finally, it's been overdue on my end, so I appreciate that. I did ask our solicitor at the meeting last night if we could look at an ordinance similar to what supposedly Reading has about owner-occupied from a certain date forward. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Committee of the Whole, Ms. Stegman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Minutes for the last meeting were submitted July 23rd, and I have no communications.
Thank you. If you could please give the second reading of ordinance number 19, 2024.
Ordinance number 19, 2024, amending section 121.01 of the St. Bernard Codified Ordinances regarding councilperson attendance at meetings, salary reduction, vacation of office, and declaring an emergency.
Members of council, you've heard the second reading of ordinance number 19, 2024. What is your pleasure?
Mr. President,
Mr. Schulmeyer.
I would like to propose that we allow ordinance number 19 to continue to go regular course to its third reading.
Do I have a second?
Seconded.
A motion by Mr. Schulmeyer, seconded by Mr. Morton for ordinance 19 to continue to take its regular course. Are there any remarks?
Yes, Mr. President.
Ms. Housefeld.
I have talked to Chris and other council members tonight. There is just some things in here that I think that is not well written out for a lack of understanding it better. Like, he literally had to go over and let us know that if you miss 3 in a row, then that's when the deduction of monies are coming out of our pay. Or if you miss 5 in 1 year, that's when we can be excused from office. And I just think that this ordinance could be written a little bit better. I also believe that even though I do believe something needs to be done to hold not only council reliable for their missing of days, I do believe that there should be an across-the-board ordinance for not only council, but, and you guys are gonna all shoot me after this, but I think it needs to be said, instead of singling out just council members, I think it should be all of us that should be singled out if we miss meetings. And I think there should be a dollar amount for every single one of us that are expected to be at these meetings. I think every single one of us should be held accountable. I don't think it should just be the 7 of us. There's other members of this body that misses quite a few meetings and nothing's ever done. And before anybody says anything, I know you guys work here full time. I understand that. But you also took the positions knowing that you had to be at council meetings. And with that being said, I think this could be written a little bit differently to hold all of us accountable for missing meetings, not just 7 out of however many there are here. I personally know that I've brought this up in the past where something does need to be done because people have missed a lot of meetings. In previous years, we had a mayor that missed quite a few meetings. In previous years, we've had at least 2 council members that missed lots of meetings. In all the years I've been involved, I think I've missed 3 meetings, maybe 4, I'll give you 4, possibly. So I'm not real worried about this, but I do think that if we're gonna do something, it needs to be across the board. It needs to hold all of us accountable. That is either elected, appointed, or whatever up here that sits on this council, in this council chambers on a Thursday night and runs the city. That's my personal belief. With that being said, I don't know if I do it now or if I wait until after you take this vote. I would like to see this tabled until we come up with a better solution for everybody. So I make a motion, if I can do it right at this point. Okay, I'll wait.
Mr. President,
Mr. Schultmeyer.
while I appreciate Patty's perspective, and I think any sort of legalese document, it can be complex in its reading. I believe that this is clear enough and describes exactly what we want it to describe as is. So I appreciate your opinion, Patty. You know I do. I would like to see it not tabled and that we complete this and kind of get it off our plate for this version. In addition, while I think the debate about whether this should include others can be out there, again, I would prefer that we pass this as is and then address others if we want to in a separate ordinance, just to not hold it up, just to keep progressing things down the road. That's my preference. Again, I respect your opinion, Patty. I would rather see it move forward.
Mr. President?
Any other remarks from council?
Yes.
Mr. Estep?
Yeah, one of the few times in my many years up here, I'd agree with Patty to a degree. And I was a mayor guilty of that, and I'm guilty of going through radiation when I had prostate cancer. So I did miss a lot of meetings, and I'm one of the people that did. I agree with Chris. We beat this horse to death. Why don't we just sign it and get it over with? And if we want to do something to include everybody, that was my point of contention from the beginning. I thought if we were going to do something like this, it should include all elected officials. I was told it was only because we are the people who do the voting. I think we all have part in that voting in one way or another. We need information from the other elected and appointed officials. As far as the money, it doesn't matter. You know, I said from the beginning, maybe a percentage would be more appropriate, but it doesn't matter either. But I just want to get my 2 cents in there. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Mr. Morton?
I agree with bits and pieces. There's also areas where I do disagree a little bit. Starting with where I agree, I am on the same page with that all elected and appointed folks that are necessary for the movement of business should be held to some sort of accountability standard. Where I disagree is I don't think it is absolutely vital to stop this in order to achieve that. I think both things can be achieved in parallel, separately. So ideally, I would like to see the advancement of this ordinance. Another area where I disagree is the misunderstanding. I read through this and to me, it landed, it made sense, and I comprehended it, all except one piece that I think could be remedied within an amendment to it. This is a question that I wrote down before the meeting, and I guess I'll yield to Chris after this, is it the salary after that certain number of missed meetings, is it reduced by 1/3 for the next pay or for every pay throughout the remainder of that term?
Mr. President,
Mr. Schultmeyer?
it is only 1/3 for the meetings that are missed after that threshold. So if you miss one meeting, it's 1/3 for that one meeting. If you were to miss 3 meetings, it would be 1/3 for each of those, but it's not 1/3 forever.
Mr. President.
Morton?
So just to be clear, so it's not, that 1/3 doesn't get compounded. So if you miss 5 meetings, it's the maximum your salary is going to be reduced is by 1/3. It will never be reduced by 2/3 and then 3/3.
That is correct. It is 1/3, and it is only a third for that month. It's not a third for the rest of the term. It's a third of that month.
Got it. So, in my mind, I think that was the only area of this that I think could deserve a little bit of clarification. I think that is a 5-word amendment, truthfully.
Mr. President?
Mr. Estes?
Mr. Morgan, you mentioned 5 meetings for the year. At the 5th one for the year, you're removed, according to this.
Mr. President, I just meant that as a hypothetical to explain that specific section of it, yeah.
Mr. President,
Mr. Edwards?
I just have one question about the bottom. If you miss 10 consecutive meetings, you can be removed by 2/3. Now, is it 2/3 of the remaining 6 members or 2/3 of 7? You would need an extra vote for that.
Mr. President, that would probably be a question for Valerie.
Mr. President,
Ms.
it's
Van Valkenburg?
2/3 of 7. Because the person you may be looking to be removed has not yet been removed.
Mr. President,
Ms. Brickway?
since I'm the one enforcing this, I'd like to ask just a couple questions. Okay, so what Patty said, I just want to get that clear. You have to miss, is it you just have to miss 3 meetings or 3 meetings in a row?
Mr. President,
Mr. Schulman?
so the way it reads is,
That's nice.
if you miss 2 meetings, on the 3rd consecutive, those have to be consecutive, you are reduced by a third for that meeting.
This is just my opinion,
That's,
and,
but,
okay.
hold on just a second then. And then it says if you miss 4 regular meetings during the year, then any meeting after that, you are also reduced a third. So if you miss the first 4 meetings of the year, you have the potential to be reduced by a third for every meeting you miss the rest of the year. They don't have to be consecutive at that point.
Okay, so before you have any money deducted, you have to miss 2 meetings and then a third. So you can just, okay, so say I miss in January, and I miss in April, and September and November, nothing happens to me, correct?
That is correct. You would, but then after that, if you missed any more, because it would be after 4, then you would be deducted.
Okay, this is my opinion, there's only, 24 meetings. I would have just rather, because I know in the beginning, and I don't go to contracts and claims meetings anymore for a reason, but I don't like the idea that it has to be consecutive, because hardly we've had a few do consecutive. It's other members who will just come and go pretty much as you please. I hate to say it. I don't know how else to say it. So I thought it was just 3 meetings, which I'm like, okay, that sounds like a fair amount. But in order to have the consecutive, that's hardly ever going to happen. But the other one thing I want to say is, everybody up there, you have the power to do something without this ordinance, but yet you do not. You do not have to approve absences, but you do because you want them to approve your absence when you're gone. I mean, that's the way it's been for 20 years with me. So you don't even need this if people used a little bit of common sense, but I think we do need it because people will not do that. But the 3 in a row, that's just my personal opinion, and you guys will be voting, and I hope once it's voted on, I'll sit down with you to make sure that I do it correctly.
Yeah, Mr. President?
Sure.
I just want to be super clear, Peggy, and I'm not sure so it's, if you miss 3 consecutive, on the 3rd one, you lose a third of your pay. If you miss 4, they don't have to be consecutive. That's the way it's worded. 4, period, throughout the year. Any after that, you get deducted, just so we're clear. And you may still say that's still not good enough, I don't know, but that's, I just want to be clear about what it says. So that's the way it reads. And then the vacated part, in order to get vacated, they have to be non-excused. So that was the difference. So that if you're to vacate it, we would have to not excuse them. The deduction in pay is whether they're excused or not. If you miss too many meetings, you stop getting paid. Now, the other part I would ask is, I don't know that we do have the ability to hold people's pay if they don't.
Yes, you do.
Do we? Okay, I didn't know we did that.
We
Can I
do.
hold Ray's from last week? I just didn't feel like you really committed to the meeting.
Mr. President?
Quick.
Yes, we have done that before. But no, okay, so I have to ask this question. So if you miss 2 in a row, but everybody on council votes to excuse you, which based on the past will happen,
So, Mr. President, so the way it reads, it doesn't matter if it's excused or not.
Oh, I thought you said it did matter.
Does not
Okay.
matter. The only part where it matters is to vacate the seat.
Okay,
Meetings that are unexcused count towards meetings to vacate the seat. The deduct in salary, it doesn't matter whether they're excused
okay,
or not.
so let's just say someone misses 3 meetings, and they're all excused, and then they miss 2 more, that doesn't go towards the 5.
It does in deduction and pay,
Right, but to
not
lose your
towards,
seat.
not towards removing them from council.
Well, then I would hope that council they start voting correctly. Because in the past, I've literally hardly ever, I've probably seen 2 people be unexcused in my entire 20 years. So that tells you how it goes. So I do not agree with that, because I think we all know how that's gonna go. So if we really want to put meat into this, and I'm fine including my position, but if you really want to put meat into it, I think that took a lot of the meat out right there. That's just my personal opinion, based on how everybody's voted for 20 years.
All right, any other remarks?
Mr. President,
Mr. Morton?
after hearing your response, and thank you for clarifying that about the reduction in pay, I hate to admit, I don't think that's harsh enough. I think a 1/3 reduction in pay when you're missing that many meetings and you're disrupting business that much, I understand the hesitation to have the, I don't want to say punishment, but the result of that being removal of council. I think pay-wise, I would like to see something more like all of it, if not nearly all of it. If you're missing that many meetings, you're unable to do the duties and responsibilities of the role. And my strong opinion there is then you should not be getting paid with taxpayer dollars for it. That would, just an additional point of feedback that I would like to see that more harsh, for lack of a better term.
Mr. President?
Mr. Schulman.
I appreciate that point of view, really. We went back and forth on the amount. We started out with, should it be equal to whatever that meeting was worth, which would be half. And then some folks thought that was too much. So we talked about 1/4, which didn't feel like enough, so we settled on 1/3. I'm just gonna tell you, you could read the laws, contracts, and claims meeting minutes. That's kind of how we came to that number. But I appreciate the thought that maybe it's not strong enough. That's just how we got there, Connor.
Mr. President,
Ms.
I just
Helms.
wanted some clarification. And the reason this was originally started, I do believe, was because of having enough people present in the legislative body to pass ordinances or resolutions or whatnot. But my question is, some of us that are sitting here are salaried. Would it be 1/3 of our salary that would be deducted? I mean, I missed the last one due to being at a work event. So I'm just, I have some questions, how it applies to other individuals.
Mr. President,
Mr.
Leanne, you're aware that's not in here now at all. This is just council. There is some folks that have a suggestion we should add it, and I would suggest that laws, contracts, and claims should consider it, but I personally do not want it added to this one at this time anyway. So just to be clear, though, it's not, this is council only as written today.
Mr. President?
Ms. Houseville?
With that being said, and that's part of the reasons why I was kind of in favor of tabling this, is because I do think they work hand in hand. And if you deduct 1/3 of our salary and you don't deduct a good portion of what their salary would be, no offense, Leanne, I'm not trying to say you per se. I was actually thinking of just a flat out dollar amount if, sorry Peggy, I'm gonna use her. If Peggy misses next week, take $100, take $50. If I miss a meeting, take $100, take $50, whatever. But that's what I was thinking, is it should be a dollar amount set up, and it should coincide with each other. Because how many times have we sat up here as the body to make decisions, to vote on decisions, and we need somebody's comments or input for us to make a logical, smart decision, and somebody's missing because they're off for whatever reason it is. Do you see where I'm saying? I think that they coincide with each other, and I think if you do a third of our pay, then how are you going to say, okay, if we do a rate deduction for 2, 4, 6, say these 8 people that is in this little circle here, how can you say you justify a third of ours, but you don't justify a decent amount for them too? Does that make sense? I think they should all be relatively, sorry, I said that word wrong, but that word. I think they should all be, coincide with each other. And let's face it, how many times have we voted on something and said we were going to take care of another issue at a later point, and it was never addressed at a later point? I'm not saying this council, I'm not saying this administration at all. I'm saying in previous 20-plus years. I'm just saying if we're going to do this, it needs to go uniformative across the board. And if that, and I know you can't deduct 1/3 of their salaries because they make a lot more than we do, but if it's a given dollar amount across the board, if you miss, you're gonna forfeit whatever dollar amount that we come up with. That's
Mr.
just my
President.
opinion. Thank you.
Ms. Van Valkenburg.
Yeah, I'm just, what our current ordinance states at 12101, it only discusses absences from meetings for council members. And all we were doing, what I was asked to do, was to address and change that language to reflect what the Laws, Contracts, and Claims Committee wanted. There was discussion about, what, if anything, we do with staff members or other elected officials, but it's really that's more of an apples and oranges thing. I think it personally makes sense to deal with the issue in front of us, which is just an amendment of 12101. The other issue, I think, takes some greater consideration because we are not, you all are the people that have to be here by law. You have to vote on things. We can give you guidance, we can answer questions, but we don't get to vote on things. And this, as 12101, is based on current, Ohio Revised Code statutes. And there isn't something in the Ohio Revised Code statute that addresses the situation you're currently envisioning, which doesn't mean it can't be done. But I think it really is an apples and oranges kind of thing. And I would propose that we pass the amendment to 12101, and then if council wants, we can take up the other issues separately.
Mr. President,
Ms. Brickway.
I would like to ask council that you'd at least consider amending it, take the consecutive days out, and 100% take the approval and the unapproved. Based on, sorry for the new members, but the older members, you all know how it goes. And I'm just thinking there's not a whole lot of teeth, because just from the past 20 years, I just don't see it. In the consecutive, I don't understand. I would just say, you miss so many days, you miss so many days, period. That's just my personal opinion.
Mr. President,
Mr. Edwards.
Peggy, what's the penalty if you have an unexcused absence?
If it's what we've done in the past, if it's unexcused, and I think it's, I don't know if it's majority, I don't know exactly the vote on it, but we just deducted, or I just deducted that meeting.
Mr. President.
That one meeting, so it would be half, yes, that's what we did. Then, because it was unexcused, because the member had missed so many meetings in a row, and then council finally did that.
Well, why don't we do that, but also come up with a list of excused absences, reasons you can be excused. You know, it's not like going to a Reds game. It's not like going to whatever. And if it's not on that list, you
Well-
get deducted half.
Mr.
It makes it
President,
simple.
Mr. President, I
Ms.
think
Brickman.
that's the way it was, that's the way it's supposed to be. But like I said, people would always vote to excuse the member because they knew they were going to go to a Reds game at some point and they wanted to be excused. I mean, that's just the example I'm using. It was always supposed to be like that. But since 2004, I've never seen it like that.
Ms. Van Valkenburg,
Oh, sorry.
did you want,
No, I was just going to read the existing ordinance if Mr. Edwards wanted me to do so, but Peggy's basically said, explained it to you.
Mr. President,
Mr. Schultz?
I don't necessarily disagree with Jeff. I think it would be very difficult to list all of the reasons why you might be excused. I can't imagine coming up with, I mean, it would be a list 98 pages long, right? So I appreciate the idea, I just don't know how we'd actually accomplish that.
So if I could interject, just because we've been beating this dead horse for a long while. The motion is to go regular course, so I can put it on the committee, the whole agenda to discuss, and we can table it at the next meeting if we want to redo it. But I don't think we're getting anywhere by everybody throwing out their 2 cents. I think we should just take the roll on the motion to go regular course, and like I say, I'll put it on the agenda for committee of the whole if that's acceptable to council. Yes? All
Yes.
right. While we're here, anyone in the audience wishing to address council on ordinance 19? Please state your name and address for the record.
Nicole Klungel, 551 Church. Did y'all just read this thing? Because this has been in the works for over 2 months now. You could have discussed this at the COW meeting in June, the first reading in June, the COW meeting in July, and now, only now, is all this coming up. It makes you look bad. It really does.
Anyone else wish to address council on this ordinance? If not, clerk, will you call?
Mr. President,
Yes.
sorry, if we do vote to go regular course, correct me if I'm wrong, and I may be wrong, we're not allowed to discuss it after.
The third
the
reading will,
council?
the third reading will simply be call for adoption or table or whatever. You cannot, you are correct, you cannot change it
Mr. President, so you cannot amend it.
after the third reading.
After
is-
tonight, you can't amend it.
After the
After
second
the second
amendment.
reading, you can amend it.
No, you can't. I don't think so.
Yeah.
You're correct.
Mr. Mr. President, at 121:10, and then it's A, B, I think it's B, B12N, that says, after a second reading, no amendment shall be in order. Upon a third reading, the question shall be upon the final passage, which must be determined by aye or no vote by roll call. No ordinance, resolution, or bylaw requiring more than one reading shall be, shall be passed through its several readings together, except by separate suspension of the rules for each such ordinance, resolution, or law. So after the second reading, no amendment shall be in order. Thank you.
All right. So with that being said, clerk, will you please call the roll on the motion to suspend, or go regular course, sorry.
Mr. Morton?
Aye.
Mr. Stuchel?
Aye.
Mr. Edwards?
Aye.
Ms. Hausfeld?
No.
Mr. Schildmeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Culbertson?
Aye.
And Mr. Estep?
Aye.
6 ayes, 1 nay. Motion carries. The ordinance 19 will take its regular course, and I will also put it on the agenda to be discussed at committee of the whole. Clerk, will you please give the second reading of ordinance number 20, 2024?
Ordinance number 20, 2024, amending section 905.03 of the St. Bernard Codified Ordinances regarding weed and litter removal.
Members of council, you've heard the second reading of ordinance number 20, 2024. What is your pleasure?
Mr. President,
Mr. Schulmeyer.
I'd like to make a motion that we allow ordinance number 20, 2024 to go regular course. and have its second reading.
A motion, was that? Motion by Mr. Schultmeyer, seconded by Mr. Stuchel, that ordinance number 2024 go regular course. Are there any remarks? Not, is there anyone in the audience wishing to address council on ordinance 2024? Not, clerk, will you call the roll on the motion?
Mr. Morton?
Aye.
Mr. Stuchel?
Aye.
Mr. Edwards?
Aye.
Ms. Hausfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Schildmeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Culbertson?
Aye.
And Mr. Estep?
Aye.
7 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Ordinance 2024 will go regular course. Clerk, will you give the second reading of ordinance number 2024?
Ordinance number 2024, amending section 905.05 of the St. Bernard Codified Ordinances regarding weed and litter removal.
Members of council, you've heard the second reading of ordinance number 2024. What is your pleasure?
Mr. President,
Mr. Schultmeyer.
just a question, is this the ordinance that we were talking about earlier about, we wanted to end on the same one?
No, that's.
No, okay. Then I make a motion that we allow ordinance number 21 to go regular, 2024 to go regular course,
I'll
and
second.
hear the second reading.
Motion by Mr. Schultmeyer, seconded by Mr. Estep to allow ordinance number 2024 to go regular course. Are there any remarks? Not, is there anyone in the audience wishing to address council on ordinance 21? Not, clerk, will you call the roll of the motion?
Mr. Morton?
Aye.
Mr. Stuchel?
Aye.
Mr. Edwards?
Aye.
Ms. Hausfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Schildmeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Culbertson?
Aye.
And Mr. Estep?
Aye.
7 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Ordinance 2024 will go regular course. Clerk, will you give the first reading of ordinance number 2024?
Ordinance number 2024, amending section 905.04 of the St. Bernard Codified Ordinance, abatement of violations of chapter 905 of the Codified Ordinances.
Members of council, you've heard the first reading of ordinance number 2024. What is your pleasure?
Mr. President,
Mr. Schultmeyer.
I make a motion to suspend with the second and third reading of ordinance number 2024.
Actually, Mr. Schultmeyer, this is part of the 905 section. There is no emergency clause in this.
Okay.
So it's gonna, I thought we were gonna go regular course with the other ones and then possibly suspend the third reading on the next one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're all
I
right.
misunderstood what you were saying.
That's all right.
Okay, then I would make a motion that we go regular course.
Have a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Schultmeyer, second by Mr. Culbertson, that ordinance number 2024 go regular course. Are there any remarks? Not, is there anyone in the audience wishing to address council on ordinance number 2024? Mr. Fox, this is on ordinance 22. This isn't audience yet. I'll get to you in a little bit. All right. Clerk, will you please call the roll on suspension to go regular, or on the motion to go regular course?
Mr. Morton?
Aye.
Mr. Stuchel?
Aye.
Mr. Edwards?
Aye.
Ms. Hausfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Schildmeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Culbertson?
Aye.
And Mr. Estep?
Aye.
7 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Ordinance number 2024 will go regular course. Clerk, will you please give the first reading of ordinance number 2024?
Ordinance number 2024, an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Safety and Service to enter into a contract with Vogelpool Fire Equipment for the purchase of a new aerial fire truck and declaring an emergency.
Members of council, you've heard the first reading of ordinance number 2024. What is your pleasure?
Mr. President,
Mr. Schultmeyer.
I'd like to make a motion we suspend with the second and third reading of ordinance number 2024.
I second.
second that.
Motion by Mr. Schultmeyer, seconded by Mr. Estep to suspend with the second and third reading of ordinance 2024. Are there any remarks? Not, is there anyone in the audience wishing to address council on ordinance number 2024? Not, clerk, will you please call the roll on suspension?
Mr. Morton?
Aye.
Mr. Stuchel?
Aye.
Mr. Edwards?
Aye.
Ms. Hausfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Schildmeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Culbertson?
Aye.
And Mr. Estep?
Aye.
7 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Members of council, what is your pleasure on adoption?
Mr. President,
Mr. Schultmeyer.
I make a motion that we adopt ordinance number 2024.
I'll second.
A motion by Mr. Schultmeyer, seconded by Mr. Estep to adopt ordinance 2024. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Morton?
Aye.
Mr. Stuchel?
Aye.
Mr. Edwards?
Aye.
Ms. Hausfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Schildmeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Culbertson?
Aye.
And Mr. Estep?
Aye.
7 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Ordinance number 23, 2024 is adopted as read. Clerk, will you please give the first reading of ordinance number 24, 2020?
Ordinance number 24, 2024, authorizing and directing the auditor to transfer funds and provide additional appropriations and declaring an emergency.
Members of council, you've heard the first reading of ordinance number 24, 2024. What is your pleasure?
Mr. President,
Mr. Schultner.
I'd like to make a motion we suspend with the second and third reading of ordinance number 24, 2024.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Schultner, second by Mr. Stuchel, to suspend with the second and third reading of ordinance number 24, 2024. Are there any remarks? Not, is there anyone in the audience wishing to address council on ordinance number 24? Not, clerk, will you call the roll on suspension?
Mr. Morton?
Aye.
Mr. Stuchel?
Aye.
Mr. Edwards?
Aye.
Ms. Hausfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Schildmeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Culbertson?
Aye.
And Mr. Estep?
Aye.
7 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Members of council, what is your pleasure on adoption?
Mr. President,
Mr. Schultmeyer.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt ordinance number 24, 2024.
Seconded.
Motion by Mr. Schultmeyer, second by Mr. Morton, to adopt ordinance 24, 2024. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Morton?
Aye.
Mr. Stuchel?
Aye.
Mr. Edwards?
Aye.
Ms. Hausfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Schildmeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Culbertson?
Aye.
And Mr. Estep?
Aye.
7 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Ordinance number 24, 2024 is adopted as read. Is there anyone on council that has anything under old business? Anyone on council have anything under new business? This
Mr.
time,
President,
Ms. Hausfeld.
I just want to thank Tim and Eric, our IT guy, for coming and making today possible to get us all up and running, and I appreciate all the help that they gave all of us.
Thank you. Anyone else? Not, is there anyone in the audience wishing to address council this evening? Please state your name and address for the record.
Task Force 309 Jackson. Way. About 3-on-3 tournament. Foxy Park. And Texas Hornet tournament.
Yes, that we discussed that earlier. It's on Friday, August 16th. There's like a pavilion reunion.
Yes.
So for all the basketball players and all that to come on down, and then there's a Texas Hold'em tournament that night also.
Yes.
Yeah, correct.
Thank you, Tom.
You gonna be down there shooting hoops?
Yes.
All right.
Anyone else in the audience wish to address council this evening? Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name's Rebecca Blevins. I'm at 4410 Greenlee Avenue. I actually come with two concerns. Two of them are safety. One of them is, as I said, I live on Greenlee, right at the intersection of Church and Greenlee. We see constantly people run the stop sign. We actually have been fortunate that no child has been hit, but we have had animals hit several times because people, we call it the Greenlee Speedway. People just do not abide by the 25-mile-an-hour rule. I know we have seen speed bumps on Reading Road, Montgomery Road, and we always get the same thing from you guys. Oh, well, it's a main cut through. Our squads can't, our fire trucks can't. Why can't we do something else? Put the stop sign, make it blink, make it red. People will literally do a roll stop through there. And I sit on my porch and can count 15, 20 cars that go through. And it's ridiculous, which brings me to my next safety issue. Many of you may not know there was an accident on July 7th between Surefine and Wendy's parking lot. It involved my child, who's 17 years old. Many of you may know her. She is one of our kickers on our football team, a player on our soccer team, player on our volleyball team here. Her name is Emily. We were told that it is private property. St. Bernard could not do anything. A lady came off of McClelland, came around the corner, and smashed into my daughter's 2008 Honda Civic, doing about 35 miles an hour. It was enough that she totaled her car and caused a displaced scapular fracture on my child and a minor concussion. Nobody coming through that parking lot should have to sustain that type of injury. My daughter's car had 118,000 miles on it, being a 2008. Not that you guys probably care, but it was her brothers who went into the military, so that car also held sentimental value. Like I said, her car was totaled. St. Bernard came. I give much kudos to our police department. I love them. They're amazing. You know, they made sure Emily was okay, which she was not. I took her to Children's Hospital where she was put into a trauma bay. Her clothes were cut off of her in the trauma bay. Many of you may not know, my daughter also suffers from brain cancer. She had a brain tumor removed at the age of 6. She has been, thank God, 11 years stable, will never see remission, but after years of therapy, she has moved past the trauma of medical settings. So when they put her on the stretcher, surrounded her by 8 doctors and nurses, and I could not be with my child, and they cut her clothes off, that was traumatizing to her, all because one lady chose to speed through the parking lot. While I was at the hospital with my child, my husband said a car came the cut through again from came down trying to beat the light at Vine and almost smashed into the back end of my daughter's car. I also want to add the yellow pole as you come up from Wendy's, the yellow pole that sits there next to the big brown box. My daughter's car was sitting there when she was hit. She was doing maybe 1 mile an hour. The lady pushed her back about 15 feet. When we went with our attorney, because we do have an attorney for medical reasons, because this will sideline my child a few of her soccer and football games during her senior year of high school, we were almost hit 7 times by cars cutting that corner and flying through. I don't know if we can put a speed bump, if we can put a line, if we can put yellow lines, if we can put a stop sign, something there. St. Bernard does not have cameras there. And it is very disheartening because as a very involved member of the community I am secretary of TFC, which is our Titan fan club. I am also a member of the school board. I am very involved. I work all concessions. I see our kids walk that cut through to Rouse Park, mainly our football players and soccer players for after school practices. What happens if a car comes through and hits one of our children? And we've done nothing about it. Every time I was on the phone with one of our attorneys or one of the insurance companies, the first thing they asked me, is there a stop sign? Was there lines dividing? Was there anything that told this lady to stop? And my answer was no. But Emily was almost in the dirt. She could not get over any further when this lady came around and they ruled it a head-on collision. The lady hit her, and we think she was going to take off. That's all speculation because of the way the vehicle was pointed at the end. She grabbed the door of my child's car and tried to get my child out of the car before I could get there. The accident happened. Emily checked out of Dollar Tree at 6:58 p.m., called her father at 7:01. I took the first picture of the accident at 7:04. Luckily, she was right here in St. Bernard, but we have to do something to keep our kids safe. We have to. Luckily, that is all Emily walked away with, but now we are back in therapy for anxiety, and all of that medical trauma got back up because one lady chose to fly through there because there's not even a speed bump. There's no cameras. There's nothing. So I had to tell my attorney and the insurance companies, I don't have video footage of this because there's no cameras. So I don't know if we can put, like I said, a speed bump, if we can put lines, something, because guys, like I said, our football players walk through there. Our soccer players walk through there. Kids in general walk through there as a cut through to Ross Park. And it's not fair that now my child, when she goes to Ross Park and pulls out from football practice, guess what she sees at that stoplight? She sees that yellow pole where she was hit. Coming out of school, she will see that parking lot. She refuses to go to Surefine. She refuses to go to Skyline, Big Beat, Dollar Tree, even Wendy's right now, because she has to see the scene of the accident. And the first thing she said to me when I got to her was, why did this lady have to hit me, Mom? Why did she have to speed through the parking lot? Now, I don't come to meetings to get issues started, guys, but I felt like this was a huge safety thing. And like I said, we've been very fortunate on Greenlee that we have not had somebody hit. But the lady we found out lives very close to us, actually a 5-minute walk from my house. So who's not to say she won't come flying through one of those stop signs there and hit somebody else? Thank you.
Mr. President,
Mayor.
so I'd actually like to respond to Becky's concerns. So first, starting off with the incident involving her daughter, I'm very sorry that did happen. With respect to the private property and it not being a defined street, we do have a working relationship with the property owners, and we could work on trying to see what potentially could be done. We have no right to come put a speed bump up or painting, but we could certainly work with them. They are very open-minded individuals, but we do need to communicate with them on that and make the request. They have the right to technically, close off, say Girl Scout Lane. They own it. The area between Wendy's and, of course, their shopping area, the two locations that are there, they have control over. So we would need to work with them to do an assessment and maybe make some recommendations for that there. I'm definitely going to discuss this with Mr. Wordman, about trying to pursue that and have a discussion with, the management group for, that property, so we can work on that. We are expanding. We've put quite a few cameras in, and I'm sorry that there wasn't one that picked that up, but we are adding to that as well. Again, hopefully there'll be better coverage for that area. Secondly, the Greenlee safety issue. Greenlee Avenue is going to be redone, and there will be speed cushions, and it doesn't help immediately. And we can look at other traffic calming measures that at the recommendation of our engineers. But that is definitely a key point for not just improving the pavement, the curbs, driveway aprons. Traffic calming is a big portion of the improvement as well, and that is slated. I can be honest with you, I don't see it being completed this year. We were awarded a grant for basically 49% of the cost, but I don't see the engineering being done to be able to have it done for this calendar year, and it will carry over into next year, but it is happening. But we will work on that, and again, we'll try to keep you updated on, I'm going to look into this accident a little bit more as well, but take a closer look at what we can do with working with the management company.
There is, it wasn't a police report because it was, again, on private property. There is a daily report. Your new officer, Mr. Savage, was the one that responded. So there is a police report for, we did call St. Bernard. And I have pictures as well if you would like to see of Emily's car.
Mr. President.
Ms. Brickwood.
This is addressed to Mayor Stuchel. I know a year or two ago, we were looking at an officer that would be just for like speeding and running red lights, and some of council were calling it a quota, which it wasn't. Is that something we can, where this officer would do just that? Just that? Because I'm gonna be honest, I'm with you 100%. I walk every day. I almost think our stop signs are a joke. People just roll right through them and they run. I live at Chalet and Ross, and you can get hit every morning with people running that red light every morning. And I thought, and my husband and I have been discussing this, and I think he was on council when it was being discussed, because he brought it up. He's like, whatever happened to that? Is that something we can look into, that we would just, I think the problem was when we said it would more than pay for itself, then we had somebody going, oh, it's a quota person, and that's not what the mayor meant by that. But I would like to see us look into something like that, because, and I don't think it's just St. Bernard. I think people are running red lights and stop signs everywhere. It seems to be a free-for-all. But if we could somehow look into that, that maybe that would help at least St. Bernard and help our children, I think that'd be a good thing to look into again. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? If not, the next committee of the whole will be Thursday, August 8th at 7 p.m. At this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. President,
Mr. Culbertson.
make a motion, we adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Culbertson, seconded by Mr. Estep to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? So ordered.